Now, as the deadline for what should be, but probably won't be, the last of Australia's shiny new online safety codes coming into force fast approaches, several prominent adult websites have officially begun restricting access to users in Australia. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the times of discreetly firing up your browser for a bit of late night anonymous debauchery are officially coming to an end. That's the reality hitting down under as porn sites like The Hub, RedTube, and YouPorn slam the door on Aussie users ahead of the March 9, 2026 age verification deadline. It's all part of the government's grand plan to shield kids from the wild west of online smut. But let's be real, is this nanny state overreach actually going to work, or is it just another bureaucratic boondoggle that's going to backfire spectacularly? As of this week, several heavy hitters in the online entertainment industry have started blocking Australian users wholesale, citing the looming enforcement of the shiny new online safety codes that mandate age verification for accessing porn, gore, or self harm content. Reports from multiple sources are showing that sites like RedTube, YouPorn, and Tube8, all owned by parent company ALO, are, as of Friday, displaying notices stating that they are not currently accepting new account registrations in your region when accessed from Australian IP addresses. This preemptive move comes just days before the enforcement of the age verification requirements under the Online Safety Act's Phase 2 codes, which aim to protect children from accessing pornography, extremely violent material, or content related to self harm. However, ALO's spokesperson stated that while the company intends to comply with the codes, the approach mirrors the UK's system, which, based on their evidence, fails to effectively protect minors and instead raises issues around data privacy and drives users to unregulated platforms hosting illegal content. The eSafety Commissioner, Julie Emin Grant, has emphasised that these measures bring offline safeguards into the digital realm, noting, "We do not allow children to walk into bars or bottle shops, adult stores, or casinos, but when it comes to online spaces where they're spending a lot of their time, there are no such safeguards."
What a crock of shit.
This woman is, in my opinion, both drunk on power and trying to treat everyday Australians as fools so as to extend the government overreach and justify her own throne's continued existence.
I believe that over time, facial age estimation, liveness tests, and other forms of age assurance will become normalized as well. Different people at different ages will have different levels of comfort with things like taking selfies or using biometrics or even digital ID.
She acts, in my opinion, as if every parent is at best inept or at worst negligent, and that is justification for government intrusion into our homes, shifting the burden from parental oversight, like using screen time limits or family discussions, to invasive state mandates that treat all families as incapable and impose a one-size-fits-all approach. It's also a false analogy that fundamentally misrepresents the roles of government, parents, and the nature of the spaces involved. Offline, laws set broad rules for physical venues like bars or casinos, with clear entry points, but day-to-day enforcement relies on parents deciding and monitoring their children's activities, not government officials stationed everywhere. Online, the internet is a borderless, multifunctional tool accessible from pretty much anywhere, home, the office, even on the go. It lacks physical gates, so the safeguards proposed demand tracking users' every movements through IDs or biometrics, raising very serious privacy nightmares and enabling surveillance creep that will definitely erode personal freedoms. This overreach very much ignores how such policies are often ineffective, and it's also likely to stifle innovation by burdening the platforms and threatening them with fines or compliance costs that favour big tech monopolies just because they're the ones that have the deep pockets. It'll also potentially lead to overblocking of beneficial content, like educational forums, although I can kind of understand why the Albanese government would want to be doing that. At its core, her stance promotes a nanny state authoritarianism that very much clashes with the principles of, limited government and personal responsibility. Where true protection comes from empowering parents with education and tools rather than top down edicts that conflate the open internet with seedy back alleys or dangerous venues. I've said it before. I very much have less of an issue with age verification for access to adult material, provided that it's targeted and minimally invasive.
Well, yeah, no shit. You'd have to be twisted in the head not to want to protect kids.
But these reforms are absolutely not the way to go about it. They mandate, amongst other things, handing over sensitive government IDs or biometric data to multiple platforms and third-party verifiers, creating massive, centralized honeypots that are just irresistible to hackers. We've seen this play out repeatedly here in Oz with the hacks to Optus, Medibank, Vic Roads, and other government departments, just to name a few. I myself had to have my license replaced because of a government screw-up that put my digital identity in jeopardy. In 2025, Discord's third-party age verification partner allegedly leaked over 70,000 government IDs, exposing users to identity theft and extortion. Similarly, in recent years, AU10Tix, a vendor for TikTok, X, and Uber, allegedly exposed driver's licenses and personal details due to lax security. And of course, let's not forget the app that encouraged ladies to spill the tea on their partners. The T-App dating breach spilled 72,000 selfies and IDs onto 4chan, leading to lawsuits and very much real-world harm. These aren't hypotheticals, they're the inevitable fallout from forcing mass data collection, which turns age verification into a serious risk for identity theft, blackmail, and other privacy violations. The eSafety Commissioner claims strong protections under the Privacy Act, like data destruction post-verification, but the reality is weak oversight and overbroad sharing, breaching principles like the whole data minimization and secure handling. This isn't just a tech glitch, it's a structural flaw that erodes at anonymity, chills free speech, and disproportionately hits marginalized groups without IDs or tech access. Affecting marginalized groups.
Nope, we're not going there, move on.
I mean, look, it's far from ideal, but when did it become insufficient to provide a credit card or other low-stakes identifier? Sure, the courts and regulators now deem it to be an inadequate measure for strict compliance, as it doesn't directly verify a user's age, but that doesn't justify leaping into surveillance-heavy alternatives that create far more problems than they solve. For years, credit cards served as a proxy since they're typically issued only to adults, sometimes to 16-year-olds with adult consent, but they offered a simple barrier without demanding full identity disclosure. Sure, it's not foolproof. Kids can borrow their parents' cards, they can have ones issued to them, and it excludes the unbanked, but it's far less risky than to upload a passport or a face scan. If a breach happens, I'd rather lose access to a replaceable credit card than suffer the whole, identity theft thing, which enables fraud, stalking, or God forbid, worse. Honestly, I've been mulling over alternatives for some time, and I have yet to land on something that I would consider perfect. But there are promising privacy-preserving options that beat what is currently proposed. For instance, zero-knowledge proofs via digital wallets like those in the EU's EID or Google Pilots. Again, I'm not a big fan of that because you're still having to hand information over, but they allow users to prove they're over the age of 18 without revealing their birthdays or giving other details. A third party verifies you're over the age of 18 once and then issues a cryptographic token for reuse across sites. I gather that some of these actually just use components in your phone that are already there as well. I considered whether something hardware-based like a USB token, similar to what we use for land title deeds here in Victoria, that emit a simple over 18 signal without transmitting personal data, just flipping an on switch for restricted content. But as it turns out, they're phasing those out too, so I don't know where we're going to from there. And to be fair, even that raises some massive red flags. It could track usage, enable abuse by authorities, linking people to political dissent, and it's definitely going to still intrude into daily life by requiring constant device tethering. Other methods like facial age estimation or behavioral analysis sound innovative, but they regularly fail on accuracy. Supposedly third-party services like OnAge or ID.me's reusable wallets offer anonymous checks via mobile data or database cross-referencing, minimizing data shared with platforms. I would still want to look into that a little bit more before I throw any sort of weight behind that.
Yeah, that still sounds fucking dodgy to me.
Honestly, as a lawyer, all I see here are legal vulnerabilities, potential breaches of the Privacy Act, and even the implied freedom of political communication in Australia's constitution. Although we'll see whether or not that actual implied freedom continues to be applicable once we see how the challenge to the social media ban actually goes through, and whether or not the mental gymnastics that the court implemented in order to give us the implied freedom of political communication actually holds up. I mean, at this point, there is no flawless solution, especially with tech-savvy kids bypassing via VPNs or unregulated apps, potentially even pushing them into even riskier spaces, which in my opinion is significantly more dangerous than just being able to sit and have a conversation with your child. But that doesn't mean that we rush into a bad one, just a virtue signal that we're doing something. True reform should prioritize education, parental tools, and platform transparency over building a surveillance state that harms everybody's rights.
I still don't understand why everyone's so willing to just bend over and take it. To me, it's the equivalent of using a nuclear warhead to take out a cockroach, which you're just not going to do. I mean, you might if you live in New South Wales, but still.
But anyway, back to the rules that are kicking in this week. The codes, developed as part of the second phase of Australia's online safety framework, target Class 1C and Class 2 materials, the categories that include fancy words for the porn that's fine for adults, plus high-octane violence and self-harm stuff. All reasonable categories in my opinion. It's shit that I would certainly want kept out of my kids' hands. 3 of the 9 codes were registered in June 2025 and took effect in December of 2025, applying to hosting services, internet carriage services, and search engines. I did a video on that, one of my biggest ones to date, which you can watch here. In that video, I dive into the details of the Phase 2 codes a little more in detail. Actually, while you're at it, make sure you hit that like button below, and if you're on mobile, give this video a hype to get it out there. I didn't realize, but it actually takes very little hype to get yourself into the top 100 here in Australia. The remaining 6 codes registered in September of 2025 activate starting this coming Monday on March 9, covering app distribution platforms, equipment providers, social media services, both core and messaging features, relevant electronic services, and designated internet services like adult content providers. Platforms must implement appropriate and effective age assurance measures with a choice of method left to them. Options include, amongst other things, government ID verification or biometric scans, such as facial age estimation. But I mean, as we've seen, it seems far more likely these sites are just going to geo-block Australian IP addresses. It's certainly easier for them to do so than to comply. The eSafety Commission has stressed that companies must minimise the collection of personal information and adhere to existing privacy laws. Although I'm not sure she's the one that's actually supposed to be enforcing the privacy laws there. But there are no additional restrictions beyond those for other businesses. Non-compliance carries hefty penalties of up to $49.5 million per instance of breach in an attempt to put significant pressure on the providers to adapt quickly.
That's an awful lot of fancy big words just to say they're going to find them up the arse if they don't do as they're told.
The regulatory push extends not just to porn sites. It impacts a wide variety of digital services, including AI chatbots, online gambling, and even search engines like Google and Microsoft, which must filter results for logged-in users under 18 to exclude harmful content. For instance, app stores and social media platforms are also required to verify ages to restrict access to age-inappropriate material, with extended deadlines for some. Search engines have until 27th of June for the age assurance, and app distribution until September 9, 2026. Yet critics are howling that this is a recipe for disaster.
Who the fuck says that people are howling? Can you please get a thesaurus?
Sex worker advocacy group Scarlet Alliance has warned of a chilling effect on platforms hosting their advertising and content, where platforms overfilter everything from ads to sexual health info just in order to be able to avoid fines. There are broader criticisms from other experts and civil society groups pointing out that there is unreliability in the age verification technology. This includes racial and gender biases in facial estimation tools, which perform far less accurately for people of colour, transgender individuals, and non-binary users.
See, now I just think you're taking the piss.
Given the feds are so hell-bent on virtue signalling to everyone, you'd think they'd be trying to avoid offending someone like the plague, but I guess the opportunity to control what Australians see online is just a little too tempting. Research from the Electronic Frontier Foundation and others focus on how these systems can discriminate, exclude marginalised groups from online, and infringe on privacy rights. For example, studies show that age estimation algorithms often misclassify adults as minors, particularly those from Black, Asian, Indigenous, or Southeast Asian backgrounds, and they fail to handle non-binary genders effectively. Moreover, the laws are seen as ineffective by many because they can be easily circumvented by VPNs, which mask users' locations. The UK's experience with similar age verification for adult sites in 2025 shows the proof in the pudding. VPN downloads surged by up to 1,800% in the first week, with apps like Proton VPN topping the charts, while UK porn traffic to sites like Pornhub plummeted and users just teleported themselves to friendlier jurisdictions. Now, let's face it, we're seeing similar patterns here in Australia. We've already got people discussing it on X and how to get around it. They've got articles like this one popping up basically explaining how to get around age verification using a VPN. It's like building a fence with holes big enough for a herd of elephants. Enter the VPN stampede.
They keep this fucking censorship shit going. I'll give them a fucking stampede, alright?
I mean, it looks like even the eSafety's own research reveals a fair bit of ambivalence from the Australian public. Folks want kids' safety, but not at the cost of Big Brother peeking into their data vaults. Human rights advocates, including those from the University of Sydney, have railed against the Rush legislation as well, calling it an outrageous abuse that ignores evidence-based decision-making and calling it undemocratic. Now, let's not kid ourselves, this isn't just about porn. We've already had the under-16 social media ban, but these ones continue to snag up social media, gaming, and even search engines like Google that must filter out the nasties for under 18s. The expansion into search engines marks an unprecedented change quietly introduced in 2025, requiring logged-in age checking for harmful search results. But who decides what's harmful? Who weighs the checks and balances? Who decides the narrative and what people see? But more to the point, is all this information just going to continue to be available if you're logged out? What happens if you open a private browser tab and just go to Google and search?
Oi, numbnuts. Shut up and stop giving me ideas.
Is this purely just an attempt to collate information with no actual viable results? Ultimately, as platforms like Pornhub and RedTube weigh their options, we will see how the full impact unfolds post-March 9, potentially reshaping Australia's digital ecosystem amid ongoing calls for more nuanced, evidence-based reforms. What's really concerning, however, is that as recently as the 4th of March, You've got members of the Greens Party saying the eSafety Commissioner doesn't have enough powers and they want her to go further to censor the internet.
Oh, govern me harder, Daddy.
Thankfully, we've got Conservative members telling people to pull their heads in because everything already complained about is, oh, I don't know, criminal action for which we already have laws. But we'll have to wait and see whether or not the lefties get to push even further. Let's face it, the age verification saga is a classic case of good intentions paving the road to digital hell. Protecting kids on paper while eroding privacy and driving traffic underground, because that's all that's going to happen. The blocks are happening, and VPNs for now are your new best friend. I am not sponsored by any VPN companies, but if they want to reach out, I'm open to thinking about it. What do you think, people? Is this overkill or long overdue? Hit that like button and share your thoughts below.
Seriously, leave some comments, otherwise the idiot's gonna keep talking to himself.
And I'll catch you all on the next one. Cheers, peeps.